KoitCast.
Hi Ian, welcome to KoitCast.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Koit. I appreciate this. This should be fun.
Yes, it will definitely be fun. There's a lot of information to go through. And I'm going to start by saying I'm not going to be doing this interview the same way as I perhaps normally would do, which is I have a long list of questions that I
Right.
run through, specifically in a narrative. We're blessed today in that you've almost given me that narrative because what I asked for was a chronology of your life and all the amazing events that are in there. So we're going to run through them like that
Okay,
today.
perfect.
So but there'll still be loads of questions, but it'll be more off the cuff for me today. So let's start though with, from your perspective, who are you, where are you from, all that stuff.
Okay, my name is Ian. I'm from Toronto, Ontario. I still live here. My background is film and television. When I was a kid, I started out doing acting in Canadian TV shows and
Ah,
commercials, and wasn't, as I got older, that interested in staying in that. So I went to university, got into film to get in the technical side, quit that, but I had my union card for acting. So I spent many years as a stand-in for various actors on film and TV projects, with the key to try and learn when I was on set camera and sound and a lot of the technical stuff that allowed me to start my own business where I do tech support for conferences where they need videos of all of their key talks in various breakout rooms and what have you, do the editing. So that's sort of the thumbnail about me.
excellent. So well into film and video. I love that. I love that sort of stuff. I'll probably ask
Me
you for advice.
too. Oh boy.
Right, so we're going to jump in to the list you sent over to me. But
Right.
you did caveat it because you wanted to put the one that wasn't necessarily the first one at the top of the list because you said it was more apt or pertinent to the conversation going forward. So you
Exactly.
said you saw a UFO above me when you're camping in the backyard at 12 years old. Over to you.
Boy. Okay, that event was probably the most indelible that I've ever experienced because number one, I wasn't into UFOs. I wasn't even a kid that watched Star Trek. That didn't really interest me.
That's
Oh, okay.
blasphemy.
Interview over. I committed a cardinal sin. Bye. No, so when I was 12, I was in the backyard with a friend camping, camping in the city. It's not exactly nature, but it's as close as one can get. There's a large maple. I'm in the same house that I was when I was 12 now, because when my mother passed, I took it over. So that tree is still out there. And I always, when I'm in the yard, think of that event. My friend and I were in a tent, but our legs were in the tent, but our upper bodies were outside the tent as we were looking up to the maple. The maple, this goes back to 1969, so the tree was smaller. I'm older, things change. So I could see above the tree, and my friend got tired and went back in the tent, but I wanted to just stay out to look at the sky because I was enjoying it. And anyway, out of the blue, this green fluorescent neon green craft, if it was a craft, it certainly was illuminated in a very, very bright green fluorescent color. So bright that if it was a solid object, you couldn't see anything that indicated the structure except this light that was emanating. And around the edges, everything was undulating, like almost like the edges of a jellyfish. Um,
Weird.
the one thing, and the reason I wanted to start with this, because I think this informs a lot of my experiences that happened earlier and then later. But the big takeaway for me was there was absolutely no fear. I was completely unafraid. I know myself well enough to know that I would have been terrified had something not, you know, altered my comfort zone, so to speak, because I was completely, it was almost like if you were in London and you saw a double decker go by, how would you react? It was just like a benign experience. It was certainly interesting, but there was no fear. I went back in the tent after seeing this, and there was no compulsion to tell my friend. Now, my friend, I can't remember, was probably still asleep. I know myself. I would have woken my friend and said, "Oh my God, I just saw blah, blah, blah." I didn't. The next morning, going back in the house, did I tell my mother? No. Did I tell my school friends? There was never a sense quite that I was being told to, stifle the data, don't say anything. It was just, I just didn't feel there was a compulsion. And I don't think that's normal. So that was what happened in 1969. 12 years old, and years would go by and didn't really think a lot about it. But there was a lot that happened earlier in life that led up to that. But that was what I would call kind of the magnum opus, the big thing that really made me realize, yeah, there's something definitely to this for sure.
And in 1969, I wouldn't imagine a massive neon glowing object would be the norm.
No, I don't see those too often flying
No.
overhead. That was a one-off. I've never seen anything like that since.
Any noise?
Absolutely none. None whatsoever. And that's interesting because at that age, I had no knowledge of what other people who experience these things encounter. So I had no idea that many UFO reports, are reported with no noise, or
Hmm.
if anything, maybe just a minimal low hum or what have you. So I always find it interesting when you have an experience without having a knowledge of the whole of all of the minutia, that when you do a deep dive, wow, other people had the same type of experience. But I had no background to understand that. But that was no noise. It went over. And later, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I had a couple of hypnosis sessions, and there was a little bit more clarity on that, which is really bizarre.
Excellent.
So,
We'll park that one then. We'll definitely
sure.
come back to that because that's important. So I'm going to write that down. So regression. So I know I'd come back to it. How long had you seen this object for, would you estimate?
The one that the green one,
Hmm.
it was coming over slowly. It was moving from the north, moving south, and it was on a very slow course. So it wasn't moving quickly at all. I would say probably it was a less than a minute, or it could have been a minute, maybe 2 minutes, because when you're that age, um, what does time mean? You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
time's
But
weird. Yeah.
it was long enough that I could see the undulating aspects of what was happening around the edges of this craft, or whatever you want to call it, take full notice of what it was. Now, I've heard other people say, and I think this makes sense in my case, is that the light that it was emanating was self-contained. It just wasn't like casting a glow on me or on the trees. I wouldn't have thought of that myself, but when other people have recounted their experiences with craft that are illuminated, they have often said it seemed like it was contained, that the light didn't hit the ground or illuminate leaves on a tree. That kind of resonates with me. But what's interesting is I think if we could go back to revisit what we experienced, it may be somewhat different than our recall.
Sure.
But that's as best as I can do in terms of my memory at this stage in my life.
That apathy thing as well, that bit where I don't know whether you call it an apathy in this case, but the bit where you don't have this compulsion, as you put it, to then speak up about it.
Right.
It's a massive event, and this is always puzzles me in that you'd think people would speak about it and go, "Whoa, look what I've seen," even if someone says, "Well, you're mad, shut up."
Exactly.
That's weird, isn't it?
Well, it's really strange to me because at that age, I didn't know a lot about stigma. I wasn't an adult to know that it's going to destroy maybe a career,
Mm.
or it's going to just disrupt a family relationship, or have neighbors call you a kook. So whatever it was just made me relax. And I think it's interesting that a lot of people feel that their emotions are often kind of curated our emotions are curated by them to some degree. Whether that's the case or not, I don't know, but I strongly think it was in that one, because I'm telling you, Coit, knowing myself, I should have been screaming like a little schoolgirl, across a property and hiding under a bed, because to me that's not a normal life event. So why
Yeah.
I was made to feel I don't know if confidence is the right word, but everything was just shut down to just accept. Everything, when I say everything shut down, I just mean my normal defenses were just kind of tamped down to just experience it with a sense of this is normal. And
Mm.
you know Richard Dolan. I don't know that you know.
I know of him. Yes, yes.
He was doing a podcast, and he talked about that as being a trait that a lot of people have experienced, where I don't know why, but I just felt this um, sense of just being able to handle it without feeling any distress, or it was just like a normal, like I say, like seeing a bus go by. I
Here's
knew
a
it was,
question then. Here's a question.
yeah.
Do you think that the emotions that you had were turned off just so that the rest of you could experience just like the clarity of seeing and hearing and smelling, all that sort of stuff, are normal, but your
Yeah.
emotions are turned off? Because it's probably a better question. Could you feel emotions at that point? Any?
Boy, this goes back so long. I felt normal, like I felt like it was me. Yeah, it wasn't
Okay.
like I was put in a state where you're frozen, almost like having a one of those dreams where you're I can't think of the word, but
Sleep paralysis sort of
yeah,
things.
sleep paralysis.
Mm.
I wasn't paralyzed. I felt my free will was there. But they were telling me, it felt like I was being told what my free will was to be at that moment. In other words, it felt normal. And it quite, it wasn't. It was very unusual.
Mm.
And it's funny if it was a dream or if it was something that was other than this, going so many decades forward, it's so indelible, to the day I die. This is going to be something I'm going to go, what the hell was that? So
If you
that
close your eyes, can you see it now?
I can remember it well. I don't have a very strong visual. I think I might have mentioned this to you before. My visual, um, my ability when I close my eyes to try and see something in my
Oh,
third
that's
eye
right.
isn't
Yeah.
strong, but I have the memory, and the memory is just as indelible as that. Now, when I dream, I do see things in my dreams, but I don't as much as I would like to when I close my eyes and see. But certainly when I close my eyes and bring back a memory, I'm informed by the experience and the memory of it so that I can describe, the tree, I can describe what I saw, but I don't, I find it remarkable that people, when they close their eyes, actually see things. I think that's pretty cool. I have a little of that, but not a strong, connection to my third eye and to be able to see that way. But
I
memories,
probably.
but
Yeah.
But I think memories may be made stronger because you lack that visual. If it's the pineal gland that isn't as active, I think memory may take over and become more active because I've got a very good memory for all events in my life, whether they're just, what movie I saw with somebody 20 years ago, what theater we went to, what we had for dinner. So I've got a very good memory for that, but I don't have a strong visual when I close my eyes. But when I close my eyes, I can reference things in terms of memory. So when you ask me to close my eyes, I might shut them and then just try and go back to that space or that time.
Yeah, I know what you mean about the imaginary thing because I have a bit of that myself. I'm not a very strong visualizer. When I was asked to be regressed for hypnosis and that, they said, "When I picture this, picture that." I'm not that good at it, so I
Yeah,
understand.
but I wish I knew the first couple of hypnosis sessions that I went to that I lacked this ability because I only found out a few years ago that that expression, what is it? Picture this in your mind's eye. I always thought that was a euphemism. I'm thinking, you mean that means something? I thought it was
Oh, the
just,
mind's eye. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, I didn't. And I'm like, so I say to people, can you see an apple if you close your eyes? And they shut their eyes and they go, oh yeah. I said, what color? What color do you want it to be? I said, get out of here. So when I went for hypnosis the first time, I had no ability to tell the person that was doing the hypnosis that I had that limitation. And she was trying to take me into things that were visual, which were so bizarre to me because I'm thinking, she was having me, plant my feet or at least imagine roots coming from my feet going into the earth to visualize it. I'm going, lady, this is crazy stuff because I couldn't get there. So when I had subsequent work done, they worked with me a little bit differently, and it did work for me.
Wow, I'd be interested to hear all about that different
Yeah,
take.
I'd be happy to share it.
Excellent.
And
Well,
and the
when we get to your
practitioner,
regression, we'll talk about that as well. So that I'm going to write that down.
sure.
It's a different path for that. Okay, so the next on the list is you inform me you had a reawakening in 2021. So what was that point? What, what occurred essentially?
During COVID, I bought a summer place out on the east coast of Canada, right over it's Atlantic waters, but I'm in a bay called the Bay of Chaleur. And I was taking pictures. This is late August, early September 2021. And
Hmm.
I just had my camera taking pictures of a sunset over the water. And I wasn't taking pictures because I saw anything that I thought was anomalous. It was just because it was a nice sunset. I look at the pictures and I see, and actually there's a video file that has those two images that you might show if you wish to. But what I saw when I looked at the pictures was in one shot what looked like a little tic tac, and an adjacent picture shows a little streak. Um, I didn't think too much of that, but I was interested in it. Within a couple of days, I had a boom, a full on. Have you heard of Kundalini? That like okay, this massive sense of bliss, of joy, which made me feel that it had something to do with the pictures that I took because it just somehow informed me that there was a connection. And a lot of people, when I told them about this, are like, in this world that we live in, which isn't right now the happiest place to be, they go, wow, if you had a sense of bliss and well-being and all of that stuff, that's pretty cool. And I'm going, no, and to a large degree, it isn't because it's a 24, for me at least, it was a 24/7 um, um, ongoing just buzz that when you try and shut down and sleep, it was near impossible on most nights to really get enough sleep. So to ride on that high for so long was just crazy. And that's when I felt it was bringing me back to my childhood. I mean, it didn't bring me back to my childhood, but I think having that experience going through this Kundalini effect made me realize, and I knew intellectually that I had all kinds of weird stuff happen, in my early days, but things that don't serve you, like if you have all these things that happen in childhood that aren't doing you any good as an adult, you kind of have to put them away because you can only, revisit that, so often before it starts to feel pointless. So all the stuff that happened in my childhood, I hadn't forgotten about, but I just thought it's in my past, whatever. This brought me back to it all. Whether it was meant to, I don't know. But immediately then I started to just dwell on the stuff that happened right from infancy up through about 5, 6, 7, even at bringing me up to the age of 12 to the incident that we just talked about with the green craft that came over the maple in the backyard. So I think that that was kind of again something that was curated for me to kind of take notice of what had happened before and then where it's taken me today.
So you literally think that is your nudge, your boom
If it
point of turnage.
I always like to say, you talk to so many people and I feel that when you watch podcasts with individuals who have had experiences, the one thing I don't want to do is cling to anything with absolute certainty because you want to keep yourself open to knowing, could it be something else? Was it
Sure.
something else? But because I've had all these experiences, that informed me that I think there's a good chance that it is related. That's what made me go to seek the first two hypnosis sessions in the same year, 2021. And then I reached out to Kathleen Marden, who I didn't know from Adam. I have no idea particularly why Kathleen Marden versus somebody else. And she turned out to be the most lovely person who took an interest in my story and gave me a number of things to consider, offered support, friendship, and what have you. So she's the real deal. And she stepped forward when I had a ton of questions. Sadly, and maybe like you, the thing about all of this, Coit, that's such a pain in the ass is you've got this onion, and you think if you start peeling the layers, you're going to get answers. You realize after you've peeled a bunch of layers, the onion's actually getting bigger and there's more frigging layers. So I don't feel sometimes when you delve into what you're seeking to find answers for, that they're necessarily there. But it's certainly an amazing deep dive, that's for sure.
Just more questions pop up
Oh
rather
God,
than
yeah.
more
Yeah,
answers.
I
Yeah,
think so.
that's weird, isn't it? I'm highly interested in the regression side of things. In that, I said this to my last guest actually. I would be a bit scared to go into regression based on what might be there. So what says to you? I will do this versus the fear of finding something shitty.
Ignorance, because I
Really? Wow.
figured no, I figured the risk going in. Well, first of all, when I went to a woman in Toronto that actually Kathleen Martin recommended, named Leslie Mitchell Clark, and she was fabulous. Made me really feel at ease. Um, but I was dubious when I went there. You feel that they're going to have you doing a chicken dance in the middle of the room. They're going to take you over to some extent where you're not in control of yourself. And I was really nervous, and I think probably the two sessions I had with her were a bit diminished because I was not fully giving myself over. Because I don't know about you, but I kind of felt like, this process, is it dangerous? Is there any chance that I'm going to be relinquishing something that I'm not going to get back? Anyway, I went for it because I felt the questions that I had were more pressing than the fear of, yeah, avoidance. I really felt I wanted to do it. But again, like we were talking about, I didn't have the strong third eye aspect, so I don't feel the first two sessions I had, I went that deep. But if anyone in your listenership or viewership is interested in doing hypnosis, if there's a real desire to do it, my misconception is or was that you're giving up more than you really are. I did a QHHT session last July, which was about 14 hours, and I
Really?
knew
Whoa.
it was amazing. And what I realized is the woman that did it's amazing, Sarah Mahar. She's super easy to work with, and basically, she's a very excitable person. So her voice is, very animated. And as soon as we did start to do the hypnosis, I'm lying down, and she goes into this deep, very calm voice. I had to open one eye, going, "Who the hell is this?" Because she
Who have
completely
you let in? Yeah.
she transitioned into somebody that was a lot more subdued. And I asked her about it afterwards. She said, basically, and she's going to kill me maybe for making this maybe more simplistic than it is, but she said, my desire is to quiet that part of your mind and to shut it down that needs to be shut down. And she said, the tones that I'm using, because I'm thinking it sounds very mystical. She said, no, it's just I'm trying to bore the shit out of that part of your mind that just needs to be quieted. And then I can then work with you when you're kind of like half bored out of your mind. And I think it's true because I never felt in any of these sessions that I was giving up anything of myself, but you just feel very relaxed and able to just kind of hone in on certain things, if that makes sense. But I
It
was
does.
like you. I was like you. I felt that I wasn't a good candidate for this stuff. Number one, because I don't have the strong visuals. Number two, I was nervous. I was more nervous of going to hypnosis than I was of seeing that green thing in the backyard over me. So that's how daunting it kind of was to just kind of approach it. But once you kind of just let it go. But I mean, I had to get up to use the bathroom during the session, and it wasn't like I was bumping into walls. I was able to function, but kind of in a lower, dense kind of almost in a bit of a haze. But
Mm.
yeah, it worked. Now the QHHT that I did last year, there was about 5 hours of recording. I've not played it back because I know a lot of stuff came out and that was unexpected. And to face it, I'm not afraid to face it, but it's just so weird listening to yourself talking about things in a way that is so real, but I didn't have any knowledge or access to that without that session. So Sarah says, listen to your session. I'm going, I just feel I need a bit of distance before sitting down for 5 hours and listening to myself go through all these things. I remember a number of these events, but when I've talked to her subsequently, since doing the session, she's mentioned a few things and I'm going, I don't remember that. And then all of a sudden, oh my God, I do remember. It's almost like having a dream. When you wake up, the dream starts to ebb away. You don't really have, I don't know
Very
whether it's
quickly as well.
a
Very quickly.
very, very quickly. To a large extent, a lot of that has happened. So for me to go and listen to this, I find a lot of it is like, ugh, it's odd, but I think I'm blessed to have the recording, and when I'm ready to listen to it, I've got it.
But you
But
said
yeah,
you did a 14-hour one as well.
it was 14 hours, but a lot of that 14 hours is a conversation that you have in advance. Number one, a lot of the time in advance of doing, we were about 5 hours in actual hypnosis. The other part was her interviewing me about what do you want to learn from this? What, why are we doing this? What are the questions that you have? And then, then we had a break before we actually started, had a very small meal, didn't eat a lot of things that were heavy, but just had a quick break. And then we went 5 hours into the actual session. And then we did the debrief, which might have been about an hour and a half, 2 hours, where she was telling me, number one, I never felt any of the people that, the only people that have done the hypnosis with me was Leslie Mitchell Clark that I mentioned. Kathleen Martin did a light hypnosis with me to try and open up the third eye. And then Sarah Mahar that did the QHHT. Um,
What does the
and now
QHHT stand for, by the way?
quantum, oh yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, you had to ask that,
I
didn't you?
did, because I have no idea what it is.
Okay, it's a protocol that was developed by a woman named Dolores Cannon.
Canon, oh yes.
She was I believe she was an experiencer, but she was also a hypnosis practitioner that developed this long form hypnosis protocol that a lot of people do, but it stands for Quantum Healing Hypnosis Protocol. I'm probably going to get shot by people that do this because I got it wrong, but it's something like that. Essentially, what it is it's a technique where over time the practitioner really knows who you are as best as they can, what you wish to accomplish, and have ways of getting you into the various states of hypnosis in order to extract the information you're looking
Sure.
for.
So
Um,
on your initial briefing to Sarah, did you say, right, I want to find out about these 10 things. Did you get all of those 10 things answered?
no, actually, I didn't. And one of them, just was I wanted to know who, in quote, that they were, and the answer that I got back, I'm paraphrasing because, but was basically for me, it's not a need to know. So she said, basically, or at least I remember that they basically said, you don't need to know, there's no need for you to know where we're from. And the only thing I could guess from that is maybe it's a place that we don't even know of, or maybe it's something because I am like, when I see a shiny thing, I will go after that until I drive myself crazy. And if they were being benevolent, they might have thought, let's not tell him what it is because he's not going to have access to it. And so let's just leave it alone. But they didn't tell me where they were from, who they were. So I have no idea. But that was the one question. And they addressed it. It's like you don't need, it's not something you have a need to know. And I felt that the answer was basically it's of a place we don't know of. That there's no place to really point to. Like it's not in the Pleiades, it's maybe not another dimension. So I have no idea. But that was one of the questions that I wanted answered that I didn't get really an answer. But maybe that was the answer, that it's an unknown commodity that, we just have no ability to access.
So in the asking of that question and then them throughout that hypnosis experience telling you you don't need to know, that means presumably at a time where you were in contact with them, where you went to regress to, you would have asked them that question.
Right.
Now, a subsequent question then would be, does it not seem nefarious to you when they seem to be obfuscate stuff, they don't give answers?
That's a good question. Throughout my life, none of this has felt, well, a couple of things maybe when I was 5 years old were frightening. I've always felt this has been benevolent, that there's, I would say benevolent or clinical, nothing that's been dark. I've been very lucky because I know some people have had really bad experiences.
Mm.
For me, and I think for maybe the majority of people, it has been like this. But I didn't really feel they were obfuscating, but maybe just letting me know it's too difficult for your feeble human mind to understand because compared to who they are, we are but ants just crawling on the surface of this planet, maybe. So how am I supposed to understand that? I mean, that's just what I took away from it.
No, that's fair. It is fair. It's a hard question to ask and have you answer
Yeah.
because you don't know motives, do you? You're not inside their heads. But
No,
it's more theoretical, isn't it?
yeah. Well, the one thing that I have always felt is so many people have experienced different types of beings, whether they're small grays, tall grays, the what do you call them, the mantis types, yada yada yada. The only ones I ever recall are what I would call tall whites. The only reason I call them tall whites is because when you understand or see what the archetypes of these things are, it's like, yeah, no, that is the one that makes the most sense to me. So I call it a tall white. Was it a Nordic? But everything throughout my life has been very, very much the same kind of being, very tall, very slender, very human-like, with kind of elongated necks, long heads, longer arms than I would say would be usual, and just kind of not stick figures because they could almost pass as human. But I don't have all these insectoids or anything like that. They've been very almost human-like, and their pallor is very pale. Um, but that's all and that even came up in the hypnosis. Those are the things that I remember seeing in my youth, and these are the things that came through in the hypnosis that I've done.
So you saw, as part of your experiences, what you would class as tall whites.
Yeah.
Now,
Uh,
here's an interesting thing. I've been trying to follow this thread for a number of times throughout a number of the conversations with my guests, which is to say that tall whites is a reference that we use here to name them. Yeah, it's the nomenclature we're using as humans. I think it comes from Charles Hall, that one, who coined them. But they, whoever these tall whites are, aren't going to be calling themselves tall whites. Have you had any semblance of them saying what their species is? Not necessarily
None
where they
what's.
come from.
I heard you do an interview recently where you were saying, but how do you know what to call them when, that's something that you hear about from researchers? Did they tell you? And it's
Yes.
like, no, the only reason I call them tall whites is because I've read about, the short grays, the tall grays, and it's like that description best fits what I've seen. But none of them have ever said in English, I'm a tall white. Like,
Yeah, yeah. They would say like I'm a Dave species or whatever, but you know what
right,
I mean.
exactly. And that would have been one of the things that with Sarah that I probably, off the top of my head, I can't remember if that was an exact question, but I did want clarity on really who they are. And, I don't really have a ton of clarity on who they are. I wish I did.
Hmm.
But a lot of people have these experiences, and I don't think any of us really completely understand them. So it's an interesting process, but it's really interesting that you mentioned like how do you know that a tall white is a tall white? It's just based on you look at what people have described in terms of the categories, and that best fits. It could be like I mentioned, it could be a Nordic, but I've never had the small grays. I did read, however, in the mid '80s, Whitley Strieber's book, and you know how a lot of people talk about how the cover freaked them out.
It does, yeah.
The cover didn't disturb me, like it did a lot of people, because I never had an experience with an entity that looked like that. I started to read the book. It scared the living out of me. And I just remember that all I could do is read the book outside. I'd read it out in the back patio because reading it in the house scared me, which is kind of weird because you'd think by going outside thinking if you're in your house, you're kind of more terrified. But being outside is more likely they're going to grab you. So I
Yes.
was working against maybe intellect. But yeah, that book really freaked me out because I could kind of relate to a lot of the content, but I couldn't relate to the cover or to that being because
To
mine
the
didn't
image,
look
yeah.
out. Yeah, to that
The
image.
image is what gets me. So I don't know whether there's any of that in my life. I don't know, but the image of the grey always worries or freaks me out.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to know, and this is a feeling that I have is I think I told you that I don't have a web page because this is pretty private to me and I haven't really gone too public with it. I've done a couple of these podcasts, and the first time I started talking about it on the first podcast I did, I felt like I was at a country fair, they might have a tightrope. I felt like somebody that was walking out on the tightrope for the first time and looking at the ground going, well, I'm out on the wire now, so it's all out there. And then I felt more comfortable after having broached the topic kind of publicly. But yeah, it is kind of a private thing because I think a lot of people who have had these experiences could be neighbors, could be people that you see that work in a grocery store, and they just haven't had the confidence or the ability to really share it. Because I've never felt with anything I've done in my life like it's about me or why me. Because I think if it happens to you or if it happens to me, it's probably happening to others. And I don't know whether you've done this, Paul, but if you've ever just kind of shared this with somebody where they've wanted to take you aside and said, I've had this weird experience, can I tell you about it? That's happened to me on a few occasions, and I'm thinking this may be more um, widespread than we realize. Maybe not where people recall a lot of their life events, but a lot of things are pretty weird for people because they've had experiences, but yet they haven't had an outlet because of stigma, because of people feeling that their jobs are at risk, that type of thing.
Oh, big time on that. It's definitely with the stigma and how it affects our waking life, we'll call it that. Um, did you have a compulsion to speak about this stuff, or are you only coming out because people like me are approaching you?
I have a compulsion to some degree because I'm excited about it. 2021, when I had that, the Kundalini experience
Hmm.
and that awakening, I felt this is so, I hate to say it, but it felt so amazing. It wasn't like I mentioned, all positive because you were 24/7, like just experiencing this buzz. So what it led me to do is read more about what other people felt this phenomenon was. I'd watch more podcasts like yours and others. And I'd hear people talk, and I'm like, well, me too. I understand what you're talking about. And I thought, yeah, I kind of want to share from the standpoint that um, if it helps others. The other thing that came out of this was my desire to do a lot of filming, the night sky, the day sky, to see what I would come up with because I knew I didn't know about it until, maybe a few years ago, the Dr. Stephen Greer, the CE5 protocols. That to me was interesting. And you had a guest on, oh, I think it was one of your last podcasts was with Kevin Briggs. And do
Oh
you
yes.
remember him talking about the radio communication?
Hmm.
He uses these Bofang radios. And there's a protocol that Jimmy Blanchette, who's either in California or Arizona, I can't remember, originally from Quebec in Canada, but he has this ability with these radios to achieve this communication. So I bought the radios, and I'm finding like Kevin, there's something to it. I dropped a little file
Oh,
in
I've
your
seen that one.
folders.
Yes, I watched that. Yeah.
Um, I'm maybe not as articulate when that happened because I was so excited because when I filmed that, what you have, it was like the third time it had happened that I would ask the question about what I was looking at on the editing timeline. And I'm like, that's weird. And it kept happening. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to go with it. So I just filmed it, but I could tell I was overly excited and the words were tripping out of my mouth in such a way I don't know how much clarity there was. These radios were not both. The one on the left has been going off on its own for quite some time. It's only when these two are brought close together where the antennas are nearly touching that they will both start to, become active at the same time. But there is something to the radio protocol for sure. And that use the radios know I haven't done this, but they'll put them in a microwave or they'll put them in a Faraday cage and the communication seems to go through, you know, through that
Mm.
protection, which a normal radio signal wouldn't. So what I have found, which is interesting, is that whenever I try a new protocol, it usually works really well the first few times I use it, and then it backs off a bit. And I'm wondering if it backs off because it's like, we're preaching to the converted at this point, We'll move on to others that have, but when I first got the radios, they were going crazy. When I got the camera, The first time I took it out, I'm getting things come through. Then you go through lulls. And it's interesting because I got a communication. I don't know if you have the CE5 app that Stephen Greer has.
I don't personally know.
I don't really use it, but I did open it a couple of weeks ago, and somebody sent me a message saying, I tried the CE5 protocol and it didn't work. And I'm thinking, it's not like a TV where you turn it on and a program comes on. Sometimes you have to kind of ramp up, do meditation, do the protocols that kind of will put you in a headspace for these things to come through. And I think going back to your question about what came from 2021 from that experience of Kundalini was my interest in filming, buying the radios, and outreach to other experiencers because I did feel I wanted a community. I wanted people to talk to. I wanted to see people on podcasts share their stories. And I think that's kind of what's come from this. It's just a sense of wishing to connect. Um, I'm not to the point where I feel a desire to put all this stuff out on YouTube. People have asked me, why don't I? And I'm like, well, partly because I'm lazy and partly because I feel that you're giving up a little bit of yourself that can be maybe shared a little bit more sparingly through doing an exchange with you like this.
Sure. I have a thought in relation to the CE5 stuff you were just talking about, um, which is to say, it sounds like, right, the start of an addiction, and I want you to bear with me and so you understand my intention here. You know, like when you start gambling, as an example, I don't know if you've ever done gambling. When you first
No,
start, you tend to win, right? Because that's the initial hook. And then you go through what you would term as the lull. That's where you start losing loads. And I wonder if somehow the paranormal experience is trying to hook people because it's running that similarity to me, for what you said. You started out, you got loads of reactions, then all of a sudden there's that lull. And then you're like, oh, hold on, I want more, I want more. I wonder if that somehow plays into it, some measure of addiction for our minds.
that's a really good question. I've never really thought of that. But if I have a social engagement, like if somebody says, let's go out for dinner, I'm not going to make an excuse to stay home to look at the stars.
Sure,
You
yeah,
know what I
yeah, yeah.
mean? Like I want to live my life. If it gets cloudy, or if it's cold, I'm going to go, heck no. I hasn't, I don't know of anyone that's been pulled into it to that extent. But you do raise a really good question about why would anyone do it in the first place? Because if you haven't had an experience with things that are paranormal, why would somebody do that? Maybe it would be like taking out a Ouija board and tempting fate, whether it is that they would get their hooks into you and
Mm,
take you out and onto a wild goose chase with addiction, or just bring in things that really aren't safe entities. And I think that it's really important to be grounded as best you can. Um, but I do think, yeah, I don't think I'm addicted, but I do think let's put it this way. When I got my first, when I had my first sighting after what happened in my childhood, but when I got the camera and I'm looking up and something came through, I was excited as heck. And
I bet.
then now that was about 2022 when I got the camera. So it's only been a few years, but the excitement hasn't worn off. When I get something, I'm huge. It's like, okay, that's kind of like addiction, that hit that you get from, wow. And I have friends that record also, and they share with me, I share with them. And it's kind of a fun exchange. It's not a competitive thing where I get more crafts than you do. It's just like, that's really cool.
But you do
I'm a
think that when you're offline, yeah, yeah, I did win.
The fact that I even mentioned it quite kind of says something, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So maybe there is a little bit of that. I don't know. But yeah, there are people, I think anyone has the ability probably to do this. I also think it's interesting we live in times where, say, 30 years ago, somebody wanted to do a lot of this stuff. We wouldn't have the ability to connect as you and I are connecting now because this technology didn't exist. Images that I get or videos that I get, if I wanted to share them with somebody, first of all, it'd be all photographic. It wouldn't be digital. So you'd have to have it developed, and then it would be snail mail getting it to somebody. Our ability to communicate now is instant. Do you remember it wasn't that long ago when people that were debunking all this stuff were saying, show me a good video, show me a photograph, and maybe I'll start to consider it. I think there's tons of things out there. I wouldn't call it evidence, but there's so many data points that I think, okay, there's got to be something that's beyond our comprehension of what our reality is. I mean,
I
that's just,
agree. The sad fact is, right, we've gone from that point where show me a good photo because none exists, and now we've got loads of stuff, and then we're over here where no, that's not real, that's AI. Shit, we've gone
well,
that pendulum way, which
yeah.
is such a shame.
It is a shame, and hopefully there are good enough photographic experts that are really able to do a deep dive. Actually, the one of the videos that I shot was in 2023 in December, which was a cube that came over my house, and I filed a report with MUFON, and then I filed one with Newfork, which was the National UFO Reporting Centers in the US. I'm in Canada, but they're in the US, and I filed it with them. And to my surprise, a few months later, I get an email from a guy named Larry Tyrell, who's a MUFON. I think he's a MUFON director in Florida, but I could be wrong. But they did a whole evening about cubes, different types of cubes, and where they've been sighted. So they wanted to use my footage. And I thought they were really smart. Rather than just using a clip that I provided them and where I zoomed in majorly to be able to just show the facets as this thing tumbles, they wanted the file, the original camera file. And I think that just gave them some confidence that by reviewing the whole thing, that there was a little bit more of a sense of legitimacy.
Oh,
But
sure,
yeah,
it wasn't for you to. Yeah.
I get excited when I see a really amazing capture that somebody has, um, you know, somehow captured, only to be really disappointed when it turns out to be, a hoax. I think, did you see I think it was Lou Elizondo went public with what looked like a shadow
A
of a
shadow,
craft.
yes, yeah.
And it turned out that was just a bogus. It wasn't that he was doing a deliberate hoax, but it turned out that it wasn't
No, it's just a
legit.
darker period of a plot of grass or something, wasn't it?
But I want to
Some,
give people like him, a pass on this because I don't think anybody with any degree of authenticity is going to always get it right.
well,
It's
it can't be done. It can't be done, can
no,
it?
no. Well, I think the irony is we live in an age where if these things are coming from another dimension, another, from if it's us coming from the past to visit us now in this decade, why wouldn't they just disguise themselves as a 737, making all the noise, having all the proper lights? So I'm thinking people are going, oh, there's an airplane. It may not be. And the thing they think is a UFO is a satellite. So, I mean, when you look up into the skies, it's very confusing and hard to parse what you're actually experiencing. But there are times when you have experiences that are so bizarre, like when you have an inclination to go out and look and then you see something. Or sometimes when you have a really quiet mind and you're not even attempting to do anything. I don't know, I don't know if you've shared this, but have you had these experiences, Coit, or maybe you're not wishing to?
I've had scenarios in my life where I've recognized coincidences and things like that, and strange things have happened to me. Is that what you're leaning towards?
Yeah, I just think there's just so much data that comes through that kind of to give us it's almost what somebody called once a God wink.
Oh yeah,
Something
yeah,
that's,
yeah. So signposts, I would like little
oh God,
nudges, little
yeah.
signs that you're seeing that you then think, something's definitely up here.
Do you want to hear one really weird one that I
Hell
thought
yeah.
was actually you had a guest on named Lori oh my God, I know her well and I can't even think of her. She's gonna kill me.
Laurie Tobin
Lori
Raymond, is
Tobin
it?
Raymond.
Yeah.
And I had a weird dream because I know Lori, and I had a dream. She wasn't a part of the dream, but it was about Kathleen Martin. And the dream was Kathleen Martin asked me to go to her house to pick up a horse for me to take it somewhere to be delivered. And I'm thinking, number one, I don't know if Kathleen Martin has horses. I've never been to her home. I didn't want to tell her about the dream because I thought she's going to think, why are you dreaming about me? It's too weird. So I never told Kathleen about it. I ultimately did, but I told Lori I had this weird dream that I went to pick up this horse at Kathleen's to deliver it. But like a typical male, I didn't ask directions. I just took the horse, got it, and I went, where the hell am I supposed to? So I'm going down this it's bucolic, just this beautiful gauntlet of trees and forest. I'm leaving her place to deliver the horse, and I'm going, I don't know where to go. So conveniently in my dream, there was a community center just tucked away. And I kind of woke up because I went in there to inquire where the horse would be, maybe to go. So I was telling Lori about this, and she went, well, that's kind of weird. First of all, I hadn't met Lori. I had no idea where she lived. So she said, that's kind of weird because she said, I grew up in, where was it again? New Hampshire, just a couple of blocks from Kathy's place. And I used to ride my horse by Kathy Martin's place all the time. I'm like, why? Because if you look at the landmass of Canada and the US being so large, and to have a dream about a horse and Kathy Martin and Lori having a horse and driving it by Kathy's on a regular basis as part of a
Mm.
route, I thought that was bizarre. I mean, maybe to you it just seems like random, but to me it just
No, it
felt that's
doesn't. It
kind of
doesn't. It is something poignant in it. Something is there, and I'm going to reference a show that hasn't gone out yet. I recorded an episode a few days ago with Nancy Dutertre, if I can remember her name correctly, where I asked her a question about something in the Koit zone, and she said it's strange that you asked me that question because it suits me perfectly. That sort of thing. So in this case, she said that was some measure of psychic evidence or information coming to me
mm.
because I'm thinking about her, etc. So yours is obviously similar in those respects, but it's
It
weird, isn't
just
it?
felt, well, it's kind of like in the UK, you've got so many communities, so many towns, so many villages, so many streets, so many addresses, that the odds of sharing a story with somebody that referenced exactly where they were going by with a horse, I'm like, okay,
Mm.
I give up. And it's there's and I think all of us have these kind of like you say, signposts that one of the weird ones was the cube. I when I shot the cube and I found it in my video footage, at first I thought it was a bird, but it kind of tumbled through in a kind of a drunkard's path almost. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. Zooming in, it looked like it was a multifaceted, whether it's a cube or a or another diamond shape, but it looks more
Yeah,
like
that's
a
what I
cube
thought it was like a trapezoid or something, you
or
know.
a trapezoid.
Yeah.
So I go to like it was the next day. I went to I'm right near a main street in Toronto, so I went out to get some item that I needed at a convenience store. And within about a minute of my place, there's a small art gallery. And I actually put a couple of pictures out. I look in the window and there's a picture of a cube or a couple of cubes in the sky in a painting in the gallery. I'm going, what are the odds that I'd experience after witnessing on my timeline a cube coming through? Actually, five of them came through over the course of a couple of days. And then going over just to the corner and seeing an artist's rendering of a cube in a picture. So it's, if you want to have a look at it at some point, it's there. And it kind of takes you back. Like, of all the galleries in all the world, why would it just be right here? Doesn't mean there's anything to it, but it does kind of connect you to a sense that, you know what, there's a potential that this is kind of a construct that we don't really understand, this
Yeah,
thing
I
called
look
life.
at it two ways. It could be exactly what you said, which it is signposts, but it could
Yeah.
also be a coincidence. And because that's in our brain, like cubes from your perspective, you're then latching onto the cube. There could have been a triangle in that gallery that you then ignored because your mind is tuned to the cube. So I'm playing devil's advocate there, but I actually do think on the line of there's no coincidences, there's things here for us to notice.
It's so true because I think that for a large part of my life and probably yours and others, we go out, for some reason, we find the sidewalk more interesting to look at than what's in front of us and what's above us. So we're kind of like living in this very dense 3D reality without really paying a hell of a lot of attention to things that are maybe a little bit more interesting than the sidewalk or, the phone all the time. So I think that when we look for things, we can find them.
Oh, hell
Sometimes
yeah.
if you look too hard, you're probably looking for things that are unconnected and don't really have any deep significance. But I think sometimes when something does have significance, it just kind of hits you over the head and you kind of get goosebumps. It's kind of like, that was weird. So I do think
Yeah.
there's, and everybody has those. I can't imagine somebody not having, just a ton of those experiences throughout life.
It's whether they recognize them and they stick with people, because the ones I've had stick with me, and obviously yours stick with you because you eloquently remembered them and told us about them. But I imagine there's a shed load of people in life that just dismiss because they're not looking at it as a signpost.
And probably you and I dismiss the ones that don't have the significance because they just
Yeah, and
kind
they
of,
might do later.
they might do later. Exactly.
That's another weird thing is how does time play into all of it? And on that note, actually, on time basis, I want to look at some of your early scenarios in your life, again from your list. Are these ones where you're like 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 years old, five, etc.? Are they all events that you now remember from your regression?
I remembered them. I remembered them from before the regression.
Ah, okay.
I probably have a little bit more clarity on some of them. And the reason I went to the regression is because I had these experiences that I remembered. And the first Leslie Mitchell Clark that I went to, who didn't know that I had the visual limitation, could have maybe got me further into it to get more from those early experiences. But most of those are things that I clearly remember.
Ah,
But I did get a little bit more clarity, but not a ton. But
got a
yeah,
little
no,
more meat on the bones, so to speak, but not
yeah,
the
but they
complete
were
animal.
so unusual that they're with me all these years later. They're with me for life.
Well, let's hit some of them now. The next
Sure.
one on the list was infancy, being bathed and held by the tall whites. Over to you.
That I did get a little bit more clarity on. I'm in a room. Now I'm an infant, like I mean like a newborn. And maybe people will say that you can't have recall that goes back that far. If they say it, I have it. I mean, I have that recall. How I have it, I don't know. But I remember being on a conveyor belt or a conveyor belt like system that was transporting me with a bunch of other babies or newborns on this system that was traveling, forward. And there was like a little bathing station to the left of the this conveyor belt with, and I could be wrong, but I think it was sort of a viscous liquid. And the nurses, this is what I got from hypnosis. The nurses had gloves on. I would have assumed that they were like rubber gloves, but they were more like a Velcro, not Velcro, microfiber, powder blue microfiber. And we were being examined and we were being bathed. You had a guest on and Denise Stoner. I don't know whether you remember talking to
I
Denise.
do, yeah.
She showed a picture of a nurse that she'd encountered through one of her memories, and that was chilling because my experience was very much like hers. Hers had a nurse's cap on with like a red cross. I don't recall that, but the drawing, the look of the being, the fact that the outfit looked a little bit more arcane. It looked like a little bit more from the past than probably it would have been when I was born. So, but they were like tall whites. They seemed like they were females wearing white garb that looked like typical nursing uniforms that were more from a bygone era. They were holding us, they were inspecting us. And I remember, as best as one can remember, that it didn't feel like there was a sense of like connection that a mother would have with the child, or maybe even a nurse might have with the baby. It felt very clinical. Now, hypnosis is what gave me the blue microfiber, and also it gave me a view of the room, which I felt like my memory was that it was a small little conveyor belt with just a few of us on it. But the hypnosis made it clear that it was a much larger operation with a lot more children than I realized. I shouldn't say children, but infants essentially. So that's something I'll never, ever, ever forget because it's unusual and
I
it's
would
so
say,
unusual.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So unusual that when I've met nurses, I kind of say, can I just speak to you privately for a moment? do you ever work with children on conveyor belts? And they go, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
Just had to ask because I want to always find out if maybe there was something that was ever employed in a hospital like that. But the best of my knowledge and from my research, it doesn't exist.
Well,
But I
what
don't know
answers did you get from the regression as to what it was? Because presumably that would have been one of your questions.
not really. That might not even and because I haven't listened to the 5 hour tape. If there is something that does inform me, I will send you an email and
Yeah,
tell you
that'd be cool.
what it was because I really don't have any more information other than I feel that this experience was real. Um, how my mother wasn't involved. I also wonder if it's something that may have happened pre-birth, if this is something that may have happened before I came into existence, because intellectually I realize how would a newborn have the potential? Because newborns don't have a field of vision, as
Yeah,
far
you
as I
can't
know.
see because yeah, their eyes
No,
aren't
they can't
developed.
see. So the memory comes from somewhere. Are these memories provided? Is this something that was instilled in me because I was supposed to maybe recall an element from my past that was clear in memory, but there's no way that I would have that information from that time period if it wasn't provided somehow. If that even makes sense, the way I'm.
Yeah, no, it does. The weird thing, right? I would go down the pre-birth route as well because clearly then tall whites aren't. I say clearly, right? I'm suspecting tall whites
Yep.
don't abduct hundreds, if not thousands, or however many of infants, put them on a conveyor belt, and then have them come down for some whatever reason, right? So it seems like some sort of mind or imagery metaphor of you're going towards, it's a load of you, and we're all going towards, I don't know, let 3D world say, doesn't it? That's what I would think it is.
It's so confounding, so confusing that I have no idea. Yeah, and that's why I don't want to go further and say I have an absolute understanding of what that means and what it was about. All I can tell you is what I experienced or felt I experienced and what I've retained from all these years. I mean, it is as real as looking at you right now and being on the Zoom call.
How weird.
But it's like I think most of us that have had experiences are left with infinitely more questions than we have understandings for. So that
Exactly. But
one,
see, if that happened to me, I'd have to chase that one down forever because that to me sets the tone for all the other things that would have happened in your life
it
because that's the
does.
start.
Yeah, that's why I went from 12 years old because that was the most. At 12 years old, you have vision, you have life experience. Um, so to me, that was the one that really called out to being an absolute 100% real life event. Gary Nolan had one as well that was very similar when he was doing his paper route and had a craft come over, and he will remember that for always. Those things are so indelible. We don't really understand them, but that's what took me back to the very beginning. And I think like I mentioned, a lot of that stuff I put away for years until I had the experience in 2021 with the Kundalini experience that just blew open the desire to understand all of this. I agree with you. Um, I would love to go at this from a strong research perspective, but I have no idea how I would ever. What I would like to do is go back to Sarah Mahar, who did the hypnosis, was the one that really got me as deep as she did. I've never had anything that profound before. I should probably go back to her and work with her on a couple of these um, life events that I want more clarity on. I'm not sure I'll get it, but I think that if you don't ask, you don't ask, you don't get,
That's
right?
exactly it. You don't ask, you don't get. See, to me, that would be the one that you probably would get most out of because if you got to the bottom of it, right, that explains in theory how reincarnation works, how loads of things might work, who's running the universe, who's running the reincarnation experiment or whatever. Who are the doctors? Why are people on a conveyor belt? Where are they coming from? Where's the start of the conveyor belt? these questions, I couldn't give up on them. So I would suggest if you want
Well,
to,
you're like me.
definitely
You
go
peel
there.
the onion and you kind of then at a certain point get frustrated because you keep peeling away, peeling away, peeling away, only to find out that there's more layers than you started with, kind of thing. But I think that hypnosis has been really informative because you mentioned past life. Sarah started with trying to get me into a past life. And I actually ended up going into a future life. And I thought that was really interesting. I have a lot of recall on that, but I have less recall about other things that have happened to me. And I thought that was really interesting because I thought I was going to maybe either have nothing come from it or have some sort of a past life experience. But I had a glimpse of something that happened about 200 years in the future, which I thought was, and you know what's really interesting, Coy? That felt in hypnosis more real than my life now and my experiences from, earlier in my life. It was so absolutely real. And I think in hypnosis, there is a little bit more of an ability to visualize than if I shut my eyes and try and picture an apple or whatever. But a lot of it did seem like there was clarity. And I thought that was pretty cool.
I have a question about this future life. How do you know it's a future life, short of the hypnosis person saying, "Right, we're going to go to a future now"?
Oh, she didn't. She was going to do a regression, and I just went there. So there was never any talk about time period, whether it's other than I felt that we were going to be regressed, meaning going back. But
Sure, sure. But
but
how
I
did
went
you know
forward.
in that regression that it was a future life? Had you see it? Did you see a date or anything?
She was asking me questions, and I was coming out with answers that it was like 2237 or something like that. I know it sounds. This is why I don't have a web page and I don't talk to too many people because when I hear myself talk, I'm thinking, it's interesting. You have an open mind, and the people that you interview have open minds and consider many possibilities. But I can only imagine what my stories would sound like to somebody who doesn't feel they've ever had an experience, whether they have or haven't, and have forgotten what their experience is. But for them to hear me talk about a future life or seeing something over a tree, they think it's frigging crazy. So I sometimes hear myself share them thinking, maybe I should just keep these things kind of private. But I was just shocked that what happened is she tried to get me I guess a former life or do a past life regression, and I was getting nowhere. And all I could see is a hazy. I said, "This looks like a corn stalk, like in a field, like a corn stalk."
Hmm.
And I couldn't get past it. So she had techniques of just saying, "Well, walk around it." Like if you don't know what it is, I said, "I think it's a corn stalk." She says, "Well, walk around it, see what you can gather." And then the more we examined it, it was kind of like I'm to the best of my ability to remember, I'm in a vehicle where I'm standing that's moving like so it was quite tall, but because it was fuzzy and when we're doing the work, it seemed fuzzy. So all I could see is this tall thing I thought was a cornstalk. But here I am in it. And I don't, what's so weird is you asked a good question about what a past life or a future life is. I don't know whether it really means I had a future life or if it means that there's just information that relates to um, things that I'm working through in this life. It's informing me, about what my challenges are in life and what I'm to learn here. I don't necessarily know for sure if this is actually because if there are a bunch of different timelines that we can travel, does it mean I'm ultimately going to end up there? I don't know. But all I know is that what came forth was that I'm in 2023 or in 2030 something, and that I'm working on another world or asteroid. And what we're doing is taking slabs of it was almost like shale. They were thin chunks of rock and bathing them in some sort of an chemical. I'm assuming it was like an acid bath or some sort of a bath to extract something that was being used for energy. And so when I was being, I guess, under this hypnosis process with Sarah, she was asking me about my life, and I had a sister, I had a wife, and I was wanting to retire early. And she would ask, "Well, are you doing this? Is this something that's very unique?" And I said, "No, there's a lot of people that are doing this. This is quite a common thing in 2022, 30 or 22, 20 something. There's a lot of people doing what I'm doing. I'm not exceptional, but we're doing this. And at this point, Earth has gone through a near extinction event in terms of, mostly, ecology issues that what we've done to the planet, but we've come through it, or we're getting through it. And so things are looking a little bit more positive, but we're not completely out of the woods. So I had a great sense of what I was doing, what my purpose was, who my family was, the joy of the marriage that I was in, where I knew I was smiling. Now, it's the weirdest thing, quite, because I'm like, this hypnosis thing doesn't work for me. And here I am talking about this. The other thing that's really remarkable is that when you're in a 5 hour session with all of this stuff going on, it 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 seems like it's an hour. It goes so fast, and Sarah afterwards said, "How long did it feel you were in session for?" I said, "Maybe no more than an hour at the very most, too." And she said, "Well, it's been 5 hours." Intellectually, I kind of knew when I came out of it by looking at my watch that we were, in it for that long. But there were a bunch of other things but it's too weird for me to expect you're going to buy because for me, it's so weird. Like, should I tell you a couple of other things
I just want to say something. I like the fact that the human race, if we take your timeline of your future life to be a given thing, right? Let's just assume it's going to happen. The human race is still around, so that's nice to hear for a start. We haven't killed
it
ourselves,
is.
despite like shit that we go through. There's ups and downs in everything, yeah, in personal lives and obviously species' life. So that's good to hear that we're still alive. And I like the fact that we're out in space, so we are inching closer to Star Trek, and that excites me a lot.
Yeah, I know. I think I really probably blew it with you when I said I didn't
No, no,
watch
not at
those
all.
shows. It's like, okay, where did my Zoom connection go? It's like,
Yeah.
but but yeah, I think that, and a lot of other stuff came up about, you talk about how, life may endure beyond, where we are currently if we're going down the wrong path with all kinds of things. Was that I got from the session that I did with her. Now, she said, I had no idea. She said, "You were channeling a being." And so, and afterwards she was telling me, I said, "Yeah, I kind of remember that. I was getting information that, not because of ecological problems, but ever since this world was terraformed, or whatever the proper term is, but whenever the atmosphere existed on this planet with oxygen and all of the things that supported life, it's never been stable without the help of the others, that it's always being monitored and assisted, including in our, present time period, that they've always stepped in because oxygen levels have never been something that this planet has ever been properly able to maintain correctly. That's the kind of thing with hypnosis. Like when I went into it, that's the furthest thing that I'd even consider thinking about or talking about. So I thought it was quite remarkable. So if you're ever open for doing this kind of work, Coit, I would highly recommend this individual because she was so easy to work with. And it just felt like when I came out of it, wow. To the point where, as I say, I haven't even heard the 5 hour recording that she gave me.
Now, I would have to go and listen to that 5 hour if I had one sitting there, because that would excite my intellect no end, thinking, what the shit could I be saying?
Yeah. I would, you know what, if you, not that you have 5 hours to spare, but I would share that with you. I'd have no problem with you hearing it. I just wouldn't want to necessarily be in the room when you're listening to it because it's just,
No, I get that. Yeah.
it's a little bit, it's personal because it's you talking about yourself in a way that you never knew existed. If that even makes sense, it's too,
It does, because you're not what you would class as your ego now, as your Ian,
oh
saying
yeah,
Ian stuff.
yeah,
You're a different
because
Ian.
yeah, and the whole thing too is I think a lot of what I want to know, which I didn't get, is where these things are from. And I'd just be curious, where do you think they're from? Because do you know Dr. Michael Masters, who has done all of the
I've heard of him
yeah, he's really convinced that it's us, future us, I
from the
don't know,
future. Yeah.
thousands of years in the future, coming back to see what's happening with us currently. And then there's other people that feel it's multidimensional, that we're from another dimension, or it's from another galaxy, or from somewhere in our solar system. I mean, in our in the Milky Way or what have you. And I'm thinking maybe they're all possibilities that
I
there's
think they're all possibilities, all intertwining, all happening at the same time. But I've not.
yeah, that's
The one that you've excited my intellect on now is, and I will be thinking about for a while, is that these ones are in control of the oxygen, meaning that they are essentially running the experiment planet Earth, making sure a dial is turned up to the right thing so we use the right conditions for life.
yeah, I think it's
That's
possible.
freaky because that says we're living in a petri dish and there's a species or some sort of being bigger than us and we are just things in a petri dish.
Well, it's interesting because the what I gathered is that they were doing this before life as we know it even existed here, and that it was being all prepped for this ant farm that I guess we were all living in, so to speak. But then that, when you think of it that way, doesn't it kind of diminish your sense of the wonder of it all if you feel like you're just like a little germ in a petri dish? Like somebody said to me, "Don't you feel everything you're just minimized in this universe? Doesn't that scare you to be so small in it?" And I'm going, the exact opposite. I feel that whatever this is makes me feel that I'm plugged into something that's so magnificent that I'm like living in the wonderment rather than feeling like I'm so tiny in this vastness that I feel worthless or pointless. I feel it's the opposite. I don't know.
I look at it the same way you do, and also that it just gives us more to explore. If the universe and everything is bigger, it gives more for us to latch onto and discover, to journey to because that's what the human mind does. It wants to
Yeah.
reach out and explore and discover. So if we had all the answers, and a previous guest has said this to me, is if we have all the answers, then what do we become? A bored
Oh,
race, and we'll
exactly.
probably kill ourselves or just die out of boredom. You need something to reach for.
Well, and also if you have a great sense of what comes next, and then what comes after that next, and after that next, it's too much information.
Hmm.
I mean, even the thought of living subsequent lives, aren't we going to get tired of chicken if we keep coming back to eat the same food over and over and over again? I
Yeah,
think
but
that
it
would
depends how you cook your chicken. I mean, I
Ex-
I love a good
exactly.
chicken.
I might be coming to you in a future life for recipes. It's like,
Yeah.
we need
Well,
help, Coit.
this is
This
my
is what.
recipe, right? Put it in the oven, blast it so it's really hard. Got no juices in it because I like mine crunchy.
Well, that's a
Yeah,
great promotion for your restaurant, Coit. I don't think
yeah,
you're going to have too many visitors, too many
burnt
customers.
food. Welcome to my
Burnt
burnt food
food.
palace.
Yeah.
Right, let's hit a couple more of these. I realised we've got a shed load that we're probably not going to get through today in our allotted time. So I'll definitely have to have you back on part two to discuss loads more of them if that's okay with you
Yeah, I'd be
at some
delighted. Yeah,
stage.
it's a
I
pleasure.
got loads more to get through, but let's hit the next one, which is astral travel to a clock tower when you're one to
Yeah,
2 years
that's
old.
that's interesting, and I did get a little bit more of that from hypnosis. I lived in an apartment building as younger than 2 years old. We were in an apartment building, Midtown Toronto. Looking from my bedroom north was a clock tower, boys' college called Upper Canada College. I remember seeing the clock tower through the window at a distance. It would be maybe a third of a mile from the window,
Hmm.
looking towards the clock tower. I remember traveling out the window, and my mother knew the person that had the house that's gone now. It was a mansion that was next to the apartment building, this big, beautiful old home. Um, I remember going out the window and looking down and seeing the roof of this mansion. Now, I don't have a visual of it, but I have a good memory of it. Going past it, going toward the tower, by the illuminated clock, by the clock face. Um, and for years, I thought this was a physical reality. I'm beginning to feel that it was probably astral travel. It probably wasn't a little baby floating out the
Hmm.
window, unless my mother was filling me with helium, which she didn't do. But I don't think I floated out the window. I think it was probably an astral travel event, but it took me literally just to the clock face. And I remember it like there's no tomorrow. The clarity that I got from the hypnosis that I did with Leslie Mitchell Clark it was just more indelible. I remembered it in greater detail in terms of just being close up to the clock face, being out at night, going over that house and just feeling like this is amazing. Um, and I've had one other event like that, but that was just remarkable to me that occurred. Now, was it a little baby going out the window? I don't know. I bet when I cried a lot as a baby, my mother probably thought out the window wouldn't be a bad idea. Just like,
What was the
my,
purpose of it?
what's the purpose?
Hmm.
I don't know. Is this a soul education to educate the soul? Is it to awaken one's sense that there's something more than just getting up, playing with toys, nap time, crying, going back to bed, that there's more to this? Because the takeaway is the memory and that it's endured for all these years. So that is kind of like there's the onion. Start peeling at it to try and
Hmm.
get some
But it
answers
didn't
about.
have to be a clock tower, as an example. It could have gone to a big tree in another
Oh
in a
God, yeah.
field or something.
That's just where I went.
Hmm.
But no, it maybe maybe the tower was something when I looked at the window because I'm assuming I could see out the window because of the crib and where I'd stand. Because I remember, I've got a really good memory for being 2 years old, like in the apartment, how the apartment was laid out. A lot of people say they don't remember formative years like that,
Yeah, I don't.
but you do as well. Do you remember going back that far? Yeah,
No, I can't even remember probably 9 or 10 or anything like that
really?
because I think I've had a few concussions in my life that have
Whoa.
aided non-remembering.
Yeah, no, it's strange because I don't talk to too many people that remember that age. I don't remember, a ton of stuff, but I remember my brother had a friend in the building on a different floor and they ordered pizza. It was the first time I'd ever had pizza. And I remember them talking about mushrooms and I went, "What's a mushroom?" And I was thinking, is it a room? Like, I mean, why would I remember stuff like that?
It's quite small though because there's not much room in there.
That's exactly. But the price of apartments now, the mushroom is a much better option for
Yeah.
affordability. But yeah,
It
so that kind of stuff I remember. So I think I could see out the window and the clock tower is where I went just because it was
because it was
all I
there.
probably knew of my outside world.
Is an interesting question then, and is it more of a theoretical, but I'd
Yeah.
be interested in your answer. When people astral travel, are they astral traveling in the 3D realm, or does the very nature of astral traveling mean it creates like a duplicate of Earth or a ghost astral travel Earth that you then visit? Does that make sense?
It does. I think you're kind of traveling in the space that we know as this reality, but from almost like I don't know if it's your soul, but something separates. I think it's your soul is able to just kind of travel in this 3D reality. I don't think it's
Hmm.
creating us. I mean, I don't know. I never want to talk to you or others like I'm informed to the point where I'm an expert on this because I'm certainly not. But I feel it's just me having the ability to pull out of myself and go somewhere in this dense 3D reality. Um, Not long ago, I had a waking dream which turned into one of these things where I live a block from a main street, and I had an astral travel event where I was walking down, it's called Young Street, but the street that I was walking down, I realized by leaning forward, taking in a deep breath and holding it, I would take off and go as high as maybe a lamppost or a small tree. and but I couldn't maintain that height. I would just slowly, it was like an arch. I would then come back down, and then I would lean forward again, take another breath, up I'd go. And the reason I think it's kind of in this reality is I was so arrogant. I was seeing passerbys, and I was actually able to say, why aren't these people impressed? Why aren't they acknowledging me doing this? Like I was so impressed with myself being able to do this because this isn't something that well, if I did this, it would be pretty remarkable. But in this reality, I was, like up and
And no one
down and
saw you, presumably.
no, and it pissed me right off
I
because I'm
imagine.
thinking, why aren't you acknowledging my incredible talent? Um, I'm not kidding
Bathing my
because
glory.
so that's what makes me think it was in this reality that I know because I'm on the street with that was so real to me where passerbys were on the street with me, but yet they had no ability to see me. And I'm thinking that's probably because if I was separating, going out and doing this, again, Kevin Briggs that you had on has had a lot of experience with this, who goes out into space. I've not had the privilege. He goes out to space. I get to the top of a lamppost and I'm impressed. It's not it's not as far as Venus, but it's a start, right? So
Oh yeah.
I don't understand how these things happen. It's only happened to me a couple of times. I don't know. Have you ever had anything like that occur where you are
Not knowingly.
no, and well it's funny because a couple of people that I've talked to said whether you know it or not, when you're sleeping or when you're in certain dream states, you do astral travel.
Oh yeah, I suspect that happens, but I have got no conscious memory of any of it.
Yeah, and maybe for the most part we're not meant to, you
Yeah,
know?
that's why I think sometimes the paranormal and people that can see or hear and do these things like you're mentioning, maybe that's a flaw in the system, or somebody's pointed out to me a feature for certain
Yeah.
people.
But I just be curious to know if you feel as I do that the stuff that I'm talking to you about is something that more people than we realize have had experiences like this that will not share them with
Oh
anyone
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
uh,
There's going to be thousands, if not millions, of people that
oh,
will, will.
I think it's millions.
Yeah, because there's
Yeah.
going to be some cultures around the world that will not talk about it, and then there's also some cultures around the world where it's so readily prevalent that they probably don't talk about it because it's such a common thing. So you've got that side of things as well.
Yes.
And we're in the middle thinking it's all bollocks and baloney, but actually it's not because so many people like yourself tell about it. And I'm on your wavelength. I just can't I don't know 100% because I'm not experiencing it. And this is
But
what I was trying I was
I'm
kind of
sure
thinking
you've
about
had
earlier. Earlier, right, you said something which is you said I can't speak too much on this because I'm not an expert. Well, when you said that, I actually thought, well, no, that's crap. And the reason why it's crap is because it's a personal experience to you, meaning you are the expert on it because it happened to you.
right. But I mean is I'm not somebody that could write a paper that would have any merit to offer proof.
No,
Like in
because
other
you
words,
you
I'm
you
not
won't have, you haven't run a big bloody research organization like cataloging thousands of people doing exactly what you do, but you've had the experience. So your the result of your experiences are going to be the same as that person who does the research.
yeah, if you can correlate data, I've had experiences that shock me when I find out that someone else has had a similar. I had an experience on craft where I felt like I'm in an apartment building or maybe not so much an apartment building, but more like a penthouse or whatever with floor to ceiling glass windows where
Hmm.
everything is built at 90-degree angles, not your typical craft that's got curved walls, like what you would think of a craft, but more like a building. And I've had an experience a couple of times in spaces like that. There are craft, but they're built very much at 90-degree angles with these tall windows. So I heard, do you know Sev talk? I heard her do a talk, and she went, I had this experience where I'm in this space that's like with these tall windows. There was no curvature, and I thought it was so weird. So I reached out to her and I said, I had the exact same experience. And she was kind enough to write back and said, thank you for validating that. Because I think when we have these experiences, I think it's important to try as best you can is parse what might be a dream, imagination versus something that's visceral, where you're actually going, that's absolutely something that I'm sticking with because I know for a fact this is a real event that happened to me, if that makes sense.
It does. I'm not in your position, so I would never know what is real, what is a dream, what is an astral thingy. Do you know what I mean? I can't picture it because I haven't had that experience. You have, so you could probably parse it easier than I. But you do need the validation from other people to help you put things into categories, maybe.
That's why I think experiencers that get together ex find out that there's a lot of common ground. I
Mm.
listen to people's stories that are so different from mine, and then all of a sudden they'll talk about one element, and I'm going, wow, that completely is bang on what I've experienced. And so I think also if there's so many different, many, what do they say, many roads lead to Rome or whatever, so many different types of experiences may come from different, like you talk about, is it some culture that's from another world, or is it something from another dimension? Somebody might be having an experience that's similar to mine, but yet it's not completely from the same group of beings or what have you. They're from different places. I would love to know more. I think that there's so many people that are reporting things that just are so fascinating. I know they're telling their truth. But boy, would I ever love to. Well, you talk about maybe this planet being, did you say terraformed? Or is that what word
That
I
was something
used?
used earlier, but I
But
was
it,
thinking it's like a zoo sort of thing, an experiment, a petri dish.
yeah, well, if it is let's say it is a zoo for a moment. And so if it's a zoo, what do people do at zoos? They come and visit. They
Observe.
may be doing experiments to make sure that the DNA isn't damaged because of environmental effects or what have you, or a thinning ozone layer. So if we are being visited and we are being, I hate to use the word toyed with, but if there's been involvement, um, I feel it's affected me, but in a good way. I don't ever want to tell people to go ahead and try and have these experiences if they're not called to, because what if I'm telling them to get involved in something that starts to open up a Pandora's box and it's not safe for them. But my experience it's all been wondrous, and it's either been benevolent or it's just been, what would the word be, neutral.
Mm.
um, and even people muse about whether ghosts, spirit, things that go bump in the night are related to this. And I think there is a connection. There's some sort of connective tissue, because if we're living in this three dimensional reality, we're connected to everything. So I think we're connected to all of our experiences, and those experiences are somehow connected to one another. So I don't know. I'm sorry I'm asking you questions when you're the interviewer. So
No, no,
when it
I
comes
like
to,
that anyway. It's more of a
do you? Because
conversation,
I
isn't it?
was because I'm curious. You've got such. I know when you have a guest, you ask really thoughtful questions, and I think, well, they must be coming from a place of experience because you seem to understand ghostly things to some degree, or have an innate ability to understand when people are talking about these things. And a look in your eye says, yeah, no, I understand. So I think there may be some experience that you've had with this.
I
And
wouldn't say that partly, and I'll try and explain. When someone says something, right, my mind instantly goes to, yeah, but what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? My mind is always on brrr mode. So
mine
when
too.
you, yeah, and I can't stop it for the most part. So I'm always thinking of the other angles that other people might not have thought about because I think that's where the answer might lie sometimes. I'm not saying it is, but I want to ask the questions that other people haven't asked. And I can't always get to there, but I try my best to find a different angle. So that's why I always think to myself, have they thought this? Have they thought that? I don't think I've had personal experiences. I have with coincidences and things that happen in my life. And some people say I'm quite psychic or at least intuitive, but I wouldn't class myself as any of that.
Well, it's funny. Well, the fact that you said you wouldn't class yourself as that, it's kind of like me. I don't class myself as an expert because I think You have to stay
Understand?
humble. Yeah, if you start to feel I am psychic, well, not there's nothing wrong if you are psychic to believe that. But I think if you try to pull yourself into that reality too quickly or cling to it too tightly, you kind of might chase it away. You just accept it and allow it to filter through. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do. Accept it,
Mm.
start to speak about it, share with others that are having these kind of experiences. And then, like you, I'm like, my mind is spinning and I'm like wanting to chase everything at once. And I think that makes life interesting, though. I mean, I would rather have this than a boring existence that didn't have what you call possibility, other than you eat, you live, and then you die.
I
It's
agree.
like,
Search
there's
for
got to
meaning and
be,
understanding is the best way, I think, of
yeah,
putting
well,
it.
and the whole thing with consciousness is such a they're starting to understand it now and feeling that it may not be rooted in the brain, that it might exist externally. And I think that's incredible. Have you ever had this experience? And I know this is going to sound weird. If you're in a shopping mall or in a store, just using that as an example,
Hmm.
and you see other people, do you ever feel that you are almost them in a way? And I don't even know how to quantify what I'm feeling is sometimes that there's a central consciousness. It's almost like a prism where you shine light through it and you get multifaceted light spillage everywhere. Well, that's us as individuals, that's spillage of light. But the source is just this one thing. And I feel that maybe we were all the same, essentially, where there's just this firewall that separates me from being you. Sometimes I have looked at people and I almost feel like, oh my God, I'm almost going to become them. Have you ever felt that?
I have
Um,
thought it, but I've never felt it.
a couple of times I've been in a store, for example, and I'll look at a couple that might be out shopping for clothes, let's say, and I feel like, oh, I better look away because I almost feel like I'm going to go home as them. In a sense, I'm not. I'm not. I'm going to
No,
wait
because
for
that
them to.
sounds a bit stalkery, doesn't it, Ian? No, I'm
Well, I'm
joking.
going to wait for them to
But
pay for it with their credit card, not
yeah,
mine.
of course.
But it's almost just that I am you, you are me. And in a
Mm,
way, it's kind of a benevolent way to think because we're in such a troubled world now where we're all thinking of each other as you are, you're in
separates.
another
Mm.
country, you're an enemy, you're this, that, and the other thing where maybe there's a little bit of an empath in me where I kind of feel I can take on other people's sorrows, maybe a little bit too personally. So I kind of feel connected to them.
Or
So I
perhaps
just
because you've had all these experiences, your mind is expanded to a point where you can feel that. Maybe I'm behind, so I'm not at the feeling point of others.
it could be, yeah. And I just like
Yeah.
to leave myself open to not assigning too much of this is an absolute in terms of a belief, because I think that in 5 years from now, let it morph, let it become what it's to become, rather than because I think you encounter people, whether it's religion or what have you, to live in this sort of a dogma that's so fixed. And I just think I'm since 2021 just kind of still in this awakening phase where I'm like, wow. So it is ongoing. So that's, where I'm at with this. But yeah, I think that when you ask questions of people, I can tell that maybe you do have a psychic side because you seem to know how to direct a conversation and know what is going to extract an answer. In fact, I was kind of worried about doing this with you because I thought you ask some really pointed questions and then you're silent for somebody then to present. And I'm thinking, well, what if it's sometimes a question is a really tough thing to answer. And I know you ask some really good, tough questions and then give people the space to address them.
Well, it's a learned lesson for me because on my early episodes, I probably didn't give them space or give them too much space.
Well, it's a balance. To me, I like to have,
Yeah.
this is why I'm kind of asking you questions because I'm inquisitive. And sometimes I feel I'm able to share maybe more of something of value in a conversation where I can riff off of, oh my God, you've experienced this. And then there's that exchange. So I love the conversation.
And I do as well. That's how I would prefer some of these to go. I have been in scenarios where some people have talked for half an hour straight, and I'm not being disrespectful to any past guests, but I like the riff on things because one idea will lead to another, and then you can bounce to find a common potentiality. Whereas
Well,
if someone just says something,
yeah.
it's closed.
Well, I'm really glad you said that because I've watched some of your interviews and I kind of feared like, well, what if you ask a question, then you're quiet for a half an hour and I'm like, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh my God, that terrifies me because I think to start to fill up a half an hour space. And then I think when people are left alone, if they're left to their own devices, they start to get nervous and then drift off the topic. And then you're way out there. So for you, I can see why that would be difficult because sometimes when you're having an engagement with somebody, it's really tough to find your way to squeeze in there to say, let's redirect. So I'm glad that you can do that.
Well, I try, but it is difficult because you're dealing with people and you're also dealing with sometimes a lag on the internet. So there might be a 5 second lag sometimes, and they're speaking, then I try and talk, and then
Oh yeah,
it buggers
that's
it all up. So there's that as well. Um, let's go on to a couple more before we enter the Koit zone.
sure.
So,
Yeah.
2 to 3 years old, being examined on a craft, dimly lit, missing my mother.
Yeah, that was really interesting because when I talked about that room that I was in with the
Hmm.
90-degree, this was a craft that had kind of the curvature that you would expect around something that seemed rounded. I was alone in kind of a dimly lit kind of hallway, left to kind of wander on my own. So I'm kind of wandering around. I could walk. These ages that I'm giving you are approximations,
Sure.
but I'm very young, walking around, and all of a sudden I'm in a room. Now, is this that I had a very similar experience in Toronto as a youth at a doctor's office. It was like a real doctor's office, but it wasn't. Is this on craft you're talking about? Because I had two that were very similar.
Yeah, this one says being examined on a craft.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of in a hallway. I call it a hallway, but it seemed like it would have been the exterior where there was either an sort of an I call it an operating room because I wasn't operated on, but there was a table that I was on and I was being examined by these tall whites. They didn't do anything that I'm aware of that was so intrusive that was painful. I think I've blocked a lot of that out, quite because it's so long ago, and whether I'm supposed to remember all of it, I don't know, but I definitely remember being left alone to wander. There was no one around. And then somehow I ended up in this room, which to me felt like we were going towards maybe an interior room on this ship or this craft. I'm up on the table, and again, tall whites, not the little grays. They were over me. This experience was what I would call neutral. It wasn't friendly, but it wasn't difficult. It was just
Hmm.
very clinical. The one thing that I've noticed, even through hypnosis, is I see their figures, I see their long arms. I don't have a good grasp of how many digits they have on their hands, but all of the imagery that I have of these beings is absolutely no facial features, which means, as far as I'm concerned, either it's traumatic for me to remember. I'm sure they had eyes. I'm sure they had noses and maybe little slits for mouth, but I saw them as very human, but I can't recall ever faces, ever. I find that really bizarre that I don't have that. But yeah, that was, it's funny when you're that age and you're kind of wandering around, it didn't feel, again, like before I went into that examining room, I didn't feel like, where's my mother? I didn't feel I was crying or there was any a terror. It just felt like I was kind of like, where am I? I'm wandering around, nobody's around. And then all of a sudden I'm in this room on a table being examined. I don't remember if there was a light above me, but I do remember being examined, and there were at least three of these beings. I call them almost, they weren't frightening. They didn't have a ton of appendages. They were very human-like. And that's all I remember. I never, in all of my memories, remember ever going to craft. I'm either on Earth or I'm there. There's never any sense of that transition of going to. So that kind of is what I remember from that experience,
You know
but
these
not for,
where you say you're either here or there. You don't
yeah.
the transition you don't remember. Is it abductions from like the daytime experiences? Have you ever had that? So let's just say you're working on something, then it's 11 o'clock, and then suddenly you're there, or is it as part of the nighttime experience. So you're asleep and then you find yourself there.
Well, it's interesting because the at that age, say 2 or 3 years old, I would have probably no awareness of time because it's so long ago,
That's
whether
fair.
I was taken at night or day. A lot of it does seem night related more so than day. I have to admit, most of the stuff does seem more at night. There was a doctor's visit that I had that was here, like in Toronto. At least it felt like it was, and it may have been a doctor that was a prosaic regular physician, but I don't remember my mother being there, and I remember it being a tall white, and it was a nighttime visit. This I do remember being nighttime because the memory is, why would I be at a doctor's appointment at night? But I have to realize that in the winter months, it starts to get dark early, so it may have been a normal doctor's visit.
Hmm.
But again, it felt like I was having a visit in a conventional doctor's office, but I'm not so sure it was because it did feel like a tall white experience. And I remember wondering, why is my mother not with me? That was kind of the disturbing aspect of that. And it did feel very similar to what I experienced. It's kind of like a companion experience similar to the one on Craft. So maybe it was on Craft and they constructed something to make me feel comfortable that it was a little bit more conventional. But it
Hmm.
seemed to feel like it was happening in the same time frame in my life.
That's fair enough. I have one final question on this before we move into the Koit zone, and then we'll have to hit all this other stuff on a part two. Um, which is to say, if you had to put it all together, why are you being taken? Do you think is it literally just examination, or are they correcting things?
Oh boy. I think, well, first of all, I don't think I've been taken for many, many years. And I think maybe some of it where I had a sense that I've been taken or had these out of body experiences. What is it to inform me of? I think the one thing I've got from this is, and maybe this isn't your question, I'm hoping I'm answering.
It's
I
okay.
feel the takeaway is I think I've become a kinder person. So I really feel that, and I mentioned being a bit of an empath, that's growing in me. And being a bit of an empath is stressful because you take on things that other people are going through. The other thing that I feel has happened, and I can't completely say it's related, but it's happened since 2021, since this awakening, is if there's a bug in the kitchen, I'm in a kitchen right now, as you can see. If there's a bug here, I would have years ago just, end of life for the bug. Now, if somebody was visiting and they were going to kill it, I go, no, no. I get a little piece of Kleenex or toilet paper, pick it up and put it outside. That's changed. So if I'm gonna try and give you a sense of what I've been maybe being taught, I suppose, is tread carefully upon this planet. Don't try and create issues that are going to be hurtful to others or to the planet. And I think kindness is the thing that comes through. Um, and I don't mean going out and handing out 100 bills at the corner and going, I'm a really nice guy. Look how kind I
Damn.
am. I
I
exactly.
was holding out my hand.
Quite. The check is in the mail, believe it. It's like it's coming. And I think it's just, and the other thing is, I joke a lot more than I used to. Like I'm joking with you. I had a visitor who was an experiencer that came out to New Brunswick, where I am on the water. And I'm not going to say who it is, but it's a fairly well-known person that's an experiencer who I have great reverence for. And she is an intellect. And I was just being a bit silly. Like I know I've seen your animations, they're really fun and whimsical. I'm like that with people
Whimsical is a
now.
word.
Yeah,
Puerile, I would say, but
well,
I'll take
that
whimsical.
would, but they are. They're fun and they're they take you out of life's the stream of life and just going into Koit's world. So I was making all these jokes, and she said, "What's up with this sarcastic?" Because I can be a little sarcastic, but very playful. That's come from this experience too. And I found the humor for me trying to, and I don't mean finding humor in other people's demise, but finding an opportunity to find a laugh in most situations brings up that sense of a spiritual alignment. I really do. And that I wasn't a joker a few years ago. I was very serious. Now I can joke about anything, but I don't have a very expressive face. So people can never figure out what the hell I'm meaning. Am I being sarcastic? Am I being serious? So I think humor is a spiritual elevator. It brings you up and being kind and also just that empath. And why I don't kill bugs, I don't know. But that, why not let something live another day,
I
basically?
agree, but I'm going to devil's advocate the bug thing, right? Do you think it's because as you get older, and I find this and find it with my dad and everything, is that as you get older, you mellow more? Do you think
Oh,
that plays
that's
part of it?
interesting. For me, I would almost, for me, it's the opposite. Since 2021, I feel I'm way more intense.
Really? Wow.
Way more intense because that Kundalini that I talked about only lasted 6 months, but then when it dissipated, I still had all the wonderings and all the things that I want to do. I'm getting older now. I have less time. Like we all do, every day is one less day we have. I want answers. So no, I think that I'm probably more intense than I've ever been. Maybe I mellow, maybe in some aspects I'm more mellow, but to me, I feel I'm a little bit more intense, a lot more verbose, as you can probably tell.
I'll tell you one thing though, if that is the result of experience is to get more empathy and more kindness and higher elevation in mood and stuff, certainly in respect to humor, then it's a noble goal, isn't it?
I think if anyone has an interest in this, I hope they're going into it with the mindset to learn and to maybe benefit from it somehow. Because if you're doing it strictly for a hobby or because I don't know, then you could be delving into something that might not net a great result. I don't know. But I think for anyone that's called to do this, they probably will have results. But I think that there's a lot of positive that comes from all of this. But way more questions than answers, that's for
Mm.
sure.
A frustrating more questions than answers, but hey, that's life, isn't it? We
It
can't know
is.
everything. And speaking of inanities, because we were talking about that earlier, my silly animations, let's get into another frame of
Mhm.
mind as we enter the Koit zone. Koit zone!
Uh-oh.
You know how this goes if you've watched my
Yeah.
animation, watched my previous KoitCast episode. So let's start with an easy one. What is the best TV show ever?
Oh my God. I love TV. And we only have 3 hours to choose this one answer. This question, right?
One answer.
Oh
What's
my
the best
God.
TV show ever?
You're gonna kill me. I'm glad you're an editor. You know, it's funny. The one that I'm watching now, because of the writing and the performance, is Golden Girls. I
Oh
don't know.
wow!
It's have you seen it?
Oh, I know of it. Yes, it used to be on Channel 4 years ago. Mine.
Yeah, no, I'm rewatching that now, and I just can't believe what they were getting away with in the mid '80s in terms of just the double entendres. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna
back
go
back
with
when we
that.
weren't being cancelled for
Yeah,
speech, you could just say
yeah,
what was, and everyone enjoyed it.
yeah, yeah. And the
Golden
women that
Girls.
played those roles were fabulous. They were just amazing. I'm gonna stick with that. That's a final answer.
That's fair enough. Can you sing or play an instrument?
I play keyboards,
Oh, nice.
but if I sang, this interview would be over very quickly. I'm not a great singer, but yeah, no, I play keyboards, and I haven't played them for years because of this thing that's kind of taken over. I've kind of gotten away from it, but I love that. That's a great stress reliever.
Are you
Yeah.
able to play with both hands so your left can do like the low notes and stuff?
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't master that one, but fair play to you if you have.
I'm not great, but I enjoy it. And other people say they enjoy it. And I think, yeah, it's
There you
funny.
go.
This is how it's, well, if that's how insecure I am, I'm going, you're full of crap. Because you know your limitations, you're really faking it. It's like, okay, so as long as they can't hear it. But yeah, if I got back into it, I'd love to do it, but I haven't done it for a long time.
Fair play, fair play. But the thing with that though, like where when people say, "Oh, you're good, you're good, you're good," and inside you're saying, "No, I'm shit, I'm crap."
Yeah.
You're just better than them. Maybe you might not be the bestest keyboardist ever, but you're
Oh, I'm
still
not.
decent.
No, 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 no.
Yeah.
I'm not. But it's a fun kind of, and I used to like writing songs and all that. But I've given way to other things.
No, that's fair enough. It's different chapters in life. That's how it goes. When was the last time you got bitten by an animal or insect?
Oh God. Well, I bug the cats all the time, so probably 5 minutes ago. Yeah, probably a cat bite and some of them are little love bites. When you pet them, and I've got one little tabby, and whenever you pet her, she gives you a little bite, but it's just to say I love you. So
Yeah,
does that qualify?
it
Or do you
does. If
want
it's still a
blood?
bite, so you've answered it.
Maybe that
What?
question you're looking for blood in your answer, but and mosquitoes, lots of them up north. So other than that,
Oh
but
yeah, that's
that I'll
true.
go with the cat bite.
Name an item that you've lost that probably had most value. So name an expensive item you've lost.
Oh, years ago when I was in a cab, I left a good Canon, 35 millimeter film camera that I never got back. That would probably be it. Oh, and then a car got stolen off my driveway a couple of years ago. It was lost to me, but somebody took it. That really sucked.
Swines. You're not alone in the
Yes.
camera thing though, because I've had other guests say they've lost cameras that they've left with.
Oh, yeah. You learn quickly. I haven't lost a phone in a while. I've lost phones, but you learn very quickly not to let things leave your hands. So yeah.
Keep it in the pockets.
Yeah.
What is your favorite thing to cook?
Oh, the thing that has the least ingredients and is the easiest. So like a frozen pizza is a specialty. No,
Put it in the oven, then turn a
probably,
dial.
yeah, no, I like my rotisserie chicken. So I'll just season a chicken, and I've got a little rotisserie and a little oven that you might see back here. I enjoy doing that, but nothing really fanciful. Somebody gave me this killer spaghetti recipe sauce. Killer recipe for this amazing spaghetti sauce. So when I start to make that, that'll be my new favorite.
Excellent. And a quick question on the chicken. Are you cooking it so it's really well done, like I like, or are you having it?
What do you think? I'm serving it raw. No, I know I'm cooking. That's a good question. No, it's cooked with a meat thermometer to make sure I'm not, but I like it a little bit, maybe just slightly past what would be
Okay.
considered right.
You like a juicy chicken. I
Yes,
like mine
all the
dry.
people I serve, everyone that's eaten my chicken has survived to live another day.
That you know of. Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Some I haven't heard from for a while. So
The ones we've killed, we don't speak about.
exactly.
Speaking of food, how is toast best done?
Ooh, you know what? It sounds kind of crazy, but I liked this avocado thing that was kind of a craze for a while. And just good old-fashioned peanut butter is another thing that is perfect on toast with a tiny bit of butter, maybe sometimes, but pretty simple stuff, you know?
Are you having flimsy toast or are you having destroyed toast? Where is your color level on the toast?
I like it kind of like mid, not too, I want to see the toasting has actually occurred. So it's not beyond warm. And I don't like to see too much carbon in terms of black coal coming out of so somewhere in between, just, where you can see the toasting has occurred and it got a bit of crunch. Then it's
That's
perfect.
fair. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, cool. I like that as well, but I'd also go with the carbon. I've got a range with my toast.
Oh, wow. You're easy to please.
Yeah, so I don't like it when the toast folds. That's wrong.
Yeah.
Um,
Excuse me. If you see I'm salivating at the end of the interview, it's because of these questions I'm getting.
toast, chicken, and avocado and spaghetti
Yeah.
sauce. You'll be
Yum, yum,
making a
yum.
special dish.
Yeah.
Are you good at DIY?
At which?
At DIY, like
Do it
jobs around the
yourself.
house. Yeah,
Oh, probably not. I used to be more than now. I think because when you have lived long enough, it's like you're tired of doing a lot of the painting. You're tired of putting things up on the wall. So yeah, I guess I am, but I don't love it.
but you
Yeah,
can't
that's a
be
good question.
arsed. That's fair enough.
Yeah, so if somebody brings in a big box of something from IKEA, I run the other direction. I don't want to deal with it.
Fair enough.
So.
What music do you listen to?
Oh my, I listen to everything that I can when I can in the car. So if I'm tuning a radio station, I might hear a song or something I love, and I may not be able to tell you who it is, but I'll go, oh my God, I love that song. And I don't know who it is. But if you ask me about a band that I just think survives the test of time, I'll go back. And I'm not saying it because you're from the UK, but I think when you look at the catalog that the Beatles had and the quality of not only the music, but the lyrics. When
High
you had a
end.
band,
Yeah.
well, it's funny when I was a kid, parents thought, oh, the Beatles, the long hair, the crappy music. jump ahead several decades, symphonies are playing those songs now.
Yep,
So that's got to mean something. So I'll go with the Beatles,
that's a good choice. A very good choice.
and they go
Do you,
great with toast and avocado.
do you have any foreign coins or notes in your house?
I do, and Ethiopia would probably be Ethiopian money.
Whoa,
Because I
I come.
did some work in Ethiopia. Last was about 2014, and then before that in 2007. And so I kept a couple of notes. You're actually not supposed to take currency from the country; it's illegal. So you have something over me. But I've got like a couple of burr and a couple of coins that are just like, great treasures. But yeah, that was kind of cool.
Nice choice. No, I would have never expected Ethiopia, so well played on that one. Um, Doctor Who swings by and he offers to take you anywhere in time and space. When and where are you going?
Oh, that's a great question. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. It certainly won't be on this planet. I guess, do I have to actually name physically where?
You can answer this however you wish.
I would love them to take me on a magical mystery tour of something far, far and away from here. So be it in this galaxy or another galaxy, but I want to go somewhere where there's life and I can breathe their atmosphere without dying. Then I'm happy.
That's a must, yeah.
And watch, they'll probably have avocado toast for me. You never
With
know.
Beatles, yeah.
With the Beatles, yeah.
Exactly. Okay. That brings us to the end of the Koit zone and thus the end of the interview part. The one question that I always ask: do you have a project that you're working on?
Yeah, I've got I'm just working on a pitch deck or a pitch kit for a broadcaster. I've got a TV series idea that I'm working with a writer on to try and pitch that's part sci-fi, part comedy, and part drama. So I'm excited about it, but God knows
Nice.
where that's going to end up. So we're really excited about it. So that's the one project that I'm working on. I love it because it's tied very closely to what I'm so interested in terms of the woo, so to speak. But before the interview is over, can I do something horribly disruptive right now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just see you ask all these great questions in terms of the Kuwait zone. Can you step into the Ian zone for a minute? I only have three for you. I just thought, is that rude of me to
No,
is
no,
that
not at all.
okay?
I like
I
it.
just came up with these before we jumped on the Zoom, and I thought, you know what, I want to know more about you in terms of how you work in terms of answering a question. If you had to move from the UK to any other country in the world, and you just had to relocate for whatever reason, where would you go and why?
I'm going to answer this one of two ways. So I've got two answers for you. One is going to be America because my girlfriend is originally from America and she has family there. So we
Yeah.
probably end up moving to America. And the other option, we like the idea of moving to either France or Italy because with our money that we could get for in England would
Yeah.
buy you a shed load of land and a bigger house in a foreign country. So Italy or France because they'd offer you a lot of land and good weather.
Well played. You've got it
There we
all
go.
figured out. Okay.
Yes.
There's only three questions because
That's
I
all
don't
right.
want to. Okay. If you are alone tonight, nobody else in your home with you, and you're alone, would you choose to have a visit from a gray? Now, you know in advance that it's going to be a benevolent encounter, but how does your comfort level or fear level affect that decision to have the visit or not have the visit?
I'm going to have to be true to myself and say no because I've said this on other interviews I've done, which is I would be scared of them. So unless
What if you knew in advance, like the experience that I had above the maple tree, if you were aware that you were going to have something that would just make you feel that you were with him as comfortably as you are with your girlfriend or your neighbor or your boss at work, that type of thing? Or would you still say, no, I'll pass?
my logical brain says if all those things were put into place, I would be okay with it. However, I'm speaking as me now thinking I don't want that because I don't want to be shit scared of anything coming at me, abducting me, and all that sort of stuff. I don't want to go there.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I totally understand. And the last question, I promise you, the last one. If you had to learn two additional languages that you don't know now, what would they be if you had to choose?
Oh, so I like that question. I like that a lot. To be practical, I would choose Spanish and probably Mandarin because
Hmm,
ultimately I think this earth is going to go a mixture of Chinese, Spanish, and English.
that's
Um,
a good reason.
I don't know whether that's going to occur in my lifetime or not, but that would Chinese is a language that's used by billions of people, so why not?
Yeah.
Um, and Spanish, for the similar reasons. But I would like to, on a flippant note, say something like Klingon to fully understand the Klingon language
Oh,
from Star Trek. But there's zero case use for that. But hey ho.
I would love to do another interview with you in 5 years when we both know Klingon and we don't speak a lick of English
And Chinese.
and Chinese. And then your listeners are going to go, what the
What
hell
the hell?
is
Exactly.
going on in the Koit zone? But yeah, no more questions. That's
Well,
it.
thank you for bringing me to the Ian zone. That's a
Yes.
new one on me, so I appreciate that.
No.
Normally at this point, Ian, I would direct people to your socials and stuff, but you don't have a website, do you, at the moment?
I don't, but if people want to reach me, I can give an email address. If people did want to reach out, I'm happy to do that.
Cool.
Especially if there's anyone that had any questions, if they've been, had experiences that they want to run by me, if that's permissible.
If
You can
you're
put it in
open to
the
me to
notes.
put it, I'll put it in the description of this video.
Sure,
But just
yeah.
bear in mind, you
It's
might get some kooks contact you.
well, that's true too. I'll set up another account. Do you want me to just send you an email or
Yeah, by all
voice?
means. And then I'll
I
add
will
it
do
whatever
that.
that you want to the
I'll do
bottom.
that afterward. Yeah. It'll
Right,
be
Ian, thank
Coops.
you ever so much for coming on. I really appreciate your time. We definitely have to do a part two because we've got so much more to go through that we won't for the limitations of time right now that we can't get to. So
You made it great fun. I really appreciate it, Coit. Thank
excellent
you.
stuff. Thank you ever so much. Goodbye, everyone. See you on the next one.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye bye. To watch other KoitCast episodes, please click the image top left. To subscribe to my channel, please click the image top right. Please like and share to help KoitCast grow, and most importantly of all, please click the notification bell so you never miss an upload.